that whole process. She's fantastic. She's really dynamic. She's a sponsor. The ARF Club was generous enough to be a sponsor of this conference, and we're so, so very thankful. She was a presenter at last year's online cat conference too. So she's really on target with the virtual education here. So Sandy, are you out there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you sound perfect. So I'm handing the baton over to you, and thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great experience with the CAT conference. I think this is amazing to be able to have a virtual experience so that you don't have to get yourself in a car or on a plane and learn some really cool stuff. The lineup, I think, has been amazing. So many good speakers, so many good topics. And I want to take you deep into fundraising today because I know most people get into the world of saving animals, especially cats, because you're very passionate about that. You're passionate about saving lives. You're passionate about doing more good for cats, and probably not so passionate about fundraising. Unfortunately, it is something you got to do if you want to save more animals. So this is my goal today, is to show you a few things that can make fundraising a little easier. So if any of these are you, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about what happens when you have a big vision and you need to raise more money to grow your programs. So maybe you want to save more animals. Maybe you want to add something new. Maybe some of you are thinking about a spay neuter clinic, or gosh, you just need to buy more equipment, more traps, more stuff so you can do more of this. Maybe you'd love to hire staff or even pay yourself. I bet there's a lot of founders here, people who have started the organization, and maybe you're thinking, this would be amazing if I could quit my day job and have enough revenue in the rescue or in the nonprofit to be able to pay myself. It can happen. Or maybe you just haven't yet mastered fundraising and would love for the whole thing to be easier. And I'm really curious if any of those apply to you. So we're going to do a poll. I'm going to give you, there we go. You should have some options on the screen, and I think you've done this already in the conference. All you have to do is click the button beside the one that you want. So your choices are, you'd love to raise more money to grow programs, you'd love to hire staff or pay yourself, or you just haven't yet mastered fundraising, would love for it to be easier. Go ahead and take another second or two. Choose the one that best describes your situation. I know some of you are probably thinking, I need a button that says all of those things. I get that. Okay, I'm going to give you just another second. Somebody's typed in the question box that yes, you need all of it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this, and let's take a look at what we got. All righty, 49% of you said you need to raise money to grow programs. That's awesome. That means more help for cats. Yay. 22% would love to hire staff or pay yourself. I get that. Oh, I get that. And 30% haven't yet mastered fundraising, would love for it to be easier. Maybe you're really tired of the little fundraisers. You're tired of selling candles and t-shirts and all that stuff. Well, that's where we're going today. We're going to talk about why your current fundraising isn't necessarily bringing in the money that you need. We're going to talk about my 3-part formula for successful fundraising, and this is where the good stuff is. If you don't already have a pen and some paper to take notes, go ahead and grab that because you're going to want it. And I'm going to round out today by talking about the 1-10-1000 rule that will get you started in planning. So if you're not really sure what to do, you're not sure where to start, you're going to know when we're done in about 50 minutes or so. So for those of you who are brand new to the world of Sandy Rees, I am a fundraising coach and trainer. I do this a lot. Actually, this is like the 3rd webinar in 3 days. I do this a lot. I've written several books. I have a book called 10K Fundraising for Animal Rescue that you can find on my website. Huge animal lover, founder of ARF Club, which is a really cool program. I'm going to tell you more about that later. I do want you to see my little cat, Ginger. Did anybody notice her little nose looks like a heart? She's a sweetheart. Anyway, here's my whole crew. I'm a huge animal lover. That's Ginger with the heart-shaped nose. Cosmo, they're our old cats. Yes, go ahead. I'm a crazy cat lady. This is Astrid, our house panther. She's awesome. Izzy, who likes to climb and get on the roof. I don't know what her story is. This is Mushu and Cricky that I came home with last summer. I have a lot of clients who are rescues and shelters, and I came home with 2 kittens from one of my rescue clients. Yes, I did. I do have dogs. This is Lucy and Maggie, and I live on a farm, have 2 horses, and one of them is a rescue. So that's my world. A lot of people look at me funny when I say I have 6 cats, but I know you guys get that. You get it. We just do. We just keep loving them. Some of them are strays and they just show up. Now, I want to talk about fundraising today, and I want to set the stage by saying I have not always known this. I know it's easy when you come to a webinar like this and you hear somebody speak and you're like, yeah, you know all this stuff. You're the expert. Of course, you know all the answers. But the truth is, I have not always known all the answers. I was not born with fundraising skills, though apparently I've been good on the phone for a long time. I've always loved animals. This was kindergarten. We did a Noah's Ark play, and I got to be one of the kangaroos. Thought that was awesome, and I still have that outfit somewhere in my house. I did not sign up for fundraising at Career Day. This was not one of my aspirations. I fell into it. I was doing corporate marketing in the late 90s, fell into fundraising by going for a tour at the local rescue mission. I started asking a lot of questions because that's what I do, and they invited me to join their board. Isn't that what we do? We find somebody with a pulse and we say, hey, do you want to sit on our board? I was on the board for a year and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. That's a whole other story. A year later, they had a job that came open in their resource development office, and I looked at it and said, oh my gosh, I could do that. It's marketing. So the president and I talked about it, decided I had the skill set. I quit my job, resigned from that board, took that job, and I've never looked back. So there for a year, and then I went to Second Harvest Food Bank. And that's when the skies opened and the angels sang, and I figured out how to raise a lot of money in a hurry. And that's part of what I'm going to teach you today. I took forever. It took me 2 or 3 years to really figure it out and build the fundraising machine, and I don't want you to have to take that long. In 2005, I started Get Fully Funded. I became a little bit restless and I wanted to do something bigger and something better. So I started the company. So we've been around 13 years. We help a lot of animal welfare groups. I sit on boards of animal groups, and I love raising money for animal groups because there's some real specific things that happen when you're raising money to save a life of a cat. When you need medical funds for a surgery, or you just want to do more TNR, whatever it is you want to do, there's money out there. And frankly, I think it's easier for you guys than some of the other nonprofits that we work with. This is a shot from our Inspired Fundraising Retreat. It's a 3-day workshop we hold in the summer. But that's a little bit about me. The truth here, the secret is I always wanted to work at the local Humane Society, and it just never worked out. And I had to go start my own business in order to say, here's what I want to do. Here's the groups that I really want to work with. And I absolutely love it. And I have my hands in a lot of different groups now, everything from horses and draft horses to senior dogs, feral cats, farm animals, mini horses. We even have guinea pig rescue, reptile rescues. We've got it all. Got it all. I've seen it all, done a lot of stuff, and I want to share a lot of that with you today. Because again, I don't want you to have to figure this out the hard way. I want to shortcut your learning curve so you can get to the good stuff fast. So we're going to talk about fundraising. Here's the truth underneath everything we're going to do today. When you raise more money, you can save more lives, right? Isn't money the thing that holds you back from doing everything that you want to do in taking care of cats? It's really all about the money. The problem is most people struggle with fundraising. Maybe they're doing it backward. And what that looks like is you go out and raise as much as you can, and then you come back and go, okay, now what can we do with this? And that's backwards. You want to think about what good you want to do and the programs you want to have. Figure out what that's going to cost and then go raise that amount of money. It's easier to do. You might be chasing nickels and dimes. Nickel and dime fundraising is that kind of fundraising when you work really, really hard and you barely make any money at all. I call those heart sink activities because your heart just sinks when you see what the bottom line is because you worked so hard. Or maybe you're doing sole source funding, meaning you are living on one revenue stream. Maybe it's your adoption fees. Maybe it's a grant from Petco or PetSmart or Maddie's Fund or the Community Cat podcast, whatever it is, you're living on one grant. Now, I'll tell you right now, I know a lot of people at a lot of these organizations and foundations, and they tell me they do not like seeing that you're surviving on one income stream, because that's not stable. It's like trying to sit on a one-legged stool. It might hold you for a second, but it will fall. And a lot of the foundations just don't like that. They want to see that you've got some diversified revenue and you have a plan and you've got a donor base, because that's what creates success in fundraising. All right, so I'm curious, which of these might sound familiar to you? So we're going to do another poll, because I like polls. I think they're fun. All right, your choices are you doing it backward? Are you going out and raising money and then coming back and seeing how you can spend it? Are you chasing nickels and dimes? You're doing a lot of things that barely bring in any money. Or maybe you're doing sole source funding, where you're living on one source of revenue, and you know in your heart that this would be easier if you had a donor base, if you had a way to raise money more consistently. You just don't know what that would look like. You're not sure where to start with that. All right, let me give you another second to vote. And I saw a question that just came in. I'm going to try to answer those questions as I go. If not, we'll have a few minutes at the end for Q&A. All right, let's close this poll and see what we got. 39% of you are doing it backward. Okay, so good news. You know better now. You can go do it different. 48% are chasing nickels and dimes. 13% are doing sole source funding. So everybody is in the right place. That's just really interesting for me. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by those results at all, because when we have not learned how to do fundraising like the big organizations do, we do what we've seen. We've seen the Buffalo Wild Wings night. We've seen the Chick-fil-A night. We've seen the spaghetti dinner. We've seen some of those things that just don't raise a lot of money. So that's what we try. Now, the good news is I'm going to show you some things today that you can run with ASAP. Like this evening, when you're done with the conference, you can start putting this stuff in place right away, or tomorrow if you'd rather. By the way, I want to just say one more thing about sole source funding, because I know a lot of you, maybe, if you're living off of the grants, sole source funding really keeps you stuck. It will limit the number of animals that you can help, because you're limited by that one revenue stream, and it really may knock you out of the running for grants. I'm telling you, I've heard this from PetSmart, Petco, and Best Friends, and they all tell me they don't like it. So now you know. I wanted to show you this as well. There is such a thing as an underfunded organization, where you don't have all the money you need and you tend to struggle. And there is such a thing as a fully funded organization. This is what we work toward. Our company name is Get Fully Funded. We work toward showing you how to raise all the money you need to completely fund your budget. And you can read through this chart and see the difference. There's a couple of things that I want to point out to you. The very first one, where underfunded organizations focus on fundraisers. So the quote fundraiser, that thing they're going to do to raise money. And that is really, if you drop all the way down to the bottom line, that those two go together. It's all about the money. It's all about what we can get out of that fundraiser. Look on the other side. Fully funded organizations are focused on donors. They understand that donors are partners in their work. Donors are people who would love to give to you, but maybe they don't have, they would love to help you do the work you do. They don't have the time or the stomach to actually do the work you're doing. So the easiest thing for them to do is write a check or hit that donate now button. Fully funded organizations understand, drop all the way to the bottom, that it's all about the relationship and future donations. You may want to take a screenshot of that, just save that for later, pour over that, save that with your board. It will change everything when you commit to becoming a fully funded organization and you start to practice what we call donor-based fundraising. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. There is something called the myth of the shoestring budget. It goes like this. We're a nonprofit, so we're supposed to struggle. We're not supposed to have money. We're supposed to make do and live on a shoestring. It's just not true. You don't have to operate on a shoestring just because you're a nonprofit. It's perfectly okay to have a lot of money and to be able to buy all the equipment, the traps, maybe even a van that you need. It's perfectly okay to pay for hundreds or thousands of spay-neuter surgeries. It's perfectly okay to have that kind of money. I think it's time to do something. I think that there's so many animals out there waiting on us. They need our help. So we got to quit fooling around with the sole source funding and the nickels and dimes and the doing it backwards, and we got to do it better. So I'm thrilled to be here and be able to share this with you today. Let's talk about what good fundraising is and what it's not. Good fundraising, donor-based fundraising, is donor-focused. It's all about the donor and understanding that it's a partnership opportunity with your donors. We also have to understand that it is transformational for the donor and the charity. So when somebody gives to you, it changes their life. Now think about this for a minute. When was the last time that you had a friend or a family member reach out to you and say, I really need your help? And what did you do? Okay, some of you may be laughing, going, I ain't helping them. But truly, if it's a friend and they call you in the middle of the night and say, my basement is flooding, can you come over and help? What are you going to do? You're going to go help them, right? And how does that make you feel as someone who is donating their time? You're donating your care and your concern. It makes you feel good, right? Yeah. So we have to understand that donors love giving because it makes them feel good. Our job is to give them a good experience. And when we do, they'll come back. Good fundraising is not about begging. It's not arm twisting. It's not selling stuff. And it is so not hitting people up. If that comes out of your mouth or if it flows through your mind, I want you to stop and say, oops, didn't mean to say that. Didn't mean to think that. If you say, well, we'll go hit up all our adopters and ask them for a donation. No, hitting people up is coming from a place of lack and manipulation. And I'm sure in your heart, you do not mean to take advantage of anybody. You're just so focused on the money that you forget that the people who have the money may really enjoy giving it to you. So we need to get rid of this language of hitting people up and start to respect the donors and the people who can give. Okay, let's go into the three-part formula for success. This is what all fundraising boils down to. You can write this down. When you get in front of the right people at the right time with the right message, they will give. There's no way around it. Right people, right time, right message, it will result in a donation. So I bet you're sitting there thinking, okay, good. Who are the right people? When is the right time? And what's that right message? And I'm so glad you asked. That's what we're going to dig into. Okay, let's talk about right people. Not everybody is going to give to your nonprofit. Some people don't give to charity at all. Other people don't give to animal causes, which I know that's blasphemy in my world too. But maybe they only give to the Cancer Society, or their favorite organization is their alma mater, or they're all about Habitat for Humanity. So we have to understand that we can't go after everybody because that's a waste of time. If this grid that you see on the screen with all these people, it kind of looks like an expanded Brady Bunch, right? If this represents everybody in your community, you have to start to pick out the right people. Is it the woman in the upper left corner with the really curly hair, or is it the man in the bottom right with that pinkish colored jacket on? Who's the right person? When you laser in, when you understand who you're looking for, it's easier to find them in large numbers and get donations, and you can stop wasting a lot of time chasing nickels and dimes and chasing things that don't turn into anything. I'm a big proponent of building a big loyal donor base to support your organization, because when you do, when you have this group of people around you and they love the work that you're doing and they feel connected to your organization, it's like having a mountain of cash, because every time you ask them, they're going to give, which is amazing. It's amazing. Now, there's a lot you have to do to keep those people engaged, but I just want you to know that when you do this, when you focus on the people and give them a good experience and help them see themselves as partners, a lot of your funding problems are going to go away, because they're going to support you. They want to see you win. They want to help you save more cats. They want to help you do more good. So let's talk about this. There's some things that are going to get in your way as you start to build that donor base. The first is what I call the passion myth. And it goes like this. We have to find people who are passionate about cats in order to get donors. And it's just not true. People don't have to be passionate about cats to give. They just have to care. Caring and being passionate, not necessarily the same thing. I remember working with a woman several years ago. It was a horse rescue. And this was her belief, that she had to find people that were passionate about saving abused and neglected horses. And I said, you really don't. How about these people over here who, are like me, they're backyard horse owners and they get it and they're not passionate, but they care and they want to give you $25. Does their money matter to you? Oddly enough, it was a difficult fight to help her understand that and see it. And she did finally. But just know this, people don't have to be as passionate as you to be super helpful to you. The next one is broad appeal. And that's where we think, oh, everybody ought to care about cats. Everybody in town ought to care about this. And they just don't. We have to find those people. We have to laser into those people who care about cats and the kind of work that you're doing. The third thing that's going to get in your way is inconsistent outreach. And this to me seems like a duh kind of moment, but I've seen way too many people who try to look for new donors once or twice a year. And guess what? They don't build their donor base very big or very fast. This is something you have to work on all the time. So you almost have to build into your head donor radar. So you're always looking for donor opportunities. So if your organization, if you foster and you adopt out cats, then are you inviting your fosters to give? Are you inviting your adopters to give? One of the biggest missed opportunities that I see in the world of animal welfare is when you have an adoption event, and some of you probably know this, there's people who will come by and they're interested in that puppy or in that kitten, they're interested in that cat, and they'll stand there and talk to you for 20 or 30 minutes or maybe longer. And at the end, they finally decide they're not going to adopt right now and they walk away. Now, I know that's frustrating, right? You just lost a huge opportunity. Maybe that person or that couple couldn't adopt right now, but they might be willing to make a donation to help you take care of those animals until they get adopted. So if you're not asking them to get involved, if you're not asking them to make a donation, you're losing a huge opportunity. Huge opportunity. I have been that person, by the way. And I'm astounded how many adoption events I go to where if I don't adopt, like people have no use for me. They're like, okay, next person. And I think, boy, you just missed an awesome volunteer. You just missed a donor. You just like I would have gotten involved with you if you'd just asked me to. Okay, so we have to think about as we look to build your big loyal donor base, who is your ideal donor? Who's the person that's most likely to give to your organization? Now, to figure this out, we're going to use a marketing tool. In the marketing world, they call it an avatar. I call it an ideal donor profile. So here's what you want to do. This is not scientific, but it will work. I've done it many, many times. I want you to think about the people who give you the biggest gifts and the most consistent gifts. So think about your large donors and the ones who have been with you a long time, the ones who give frequently. What do they have in common? This is all you're doing is you're looking for commonality. Are they mostly women or mostly men? And if you say, well, I got some of both, and you go, okay, that doesn't help. Let me move on to the next thing. Do they seem to be of a particular range in age? Are they maybe in their 40s or 50s? Are they in their 60s? Are they young? Are they in their 20s? What's the age range? If you can start to figure these things out, it will help a lot. Start thinking about what they value. And I'll tell you right now, they value life. They do not like to see any animal or children or the elderly abused or neglected. So think about, what do these people do for fun? Do they have family? Where do they spend their time? Where do they spend their money? What else do you know about them? You may not have a very long list, and that's okay. Ultimately, if you can figure out what they like, what they value, and what their interests are, you can use that to go find more people just like them. Some of this is really obvious, like doing things with local pet stores. We know that's a thing, but there may be some other things. So if you're looking for people who love cats, what do you think? Mostly women? Mm-hmm. I'll give you a giant hint on one thing that I think might be a great partnership opportunity for you. I am a quilter. I've been a quilter for many years, and I hang out in groups of quilters. Guess how many of my friends and I have cats? Almost everybody. Most quilters have cats. Some of them have dogs too, but we all laugh about the minute that you pull out a quilt that you're getting ready to work on, the cats will come out of nowhere to sit on the quilt. So we're all like constantly with the lint rollers trying to get the cat hair off. If you know that quilters love cats, you could do some kind of promotion or some kind of something with your local quilt guild. You might find some donors there or some volunteers or fosters. Isn't that interesting? That's how this works. When you figure out your profile, then you answer the big question. Where can we find these people easily and in large numbers? This is one of the activities we do in ARF Club when we're doing donor acquisition, is where are you looking? What are your big opportunities? So I'll let you sit with that for a minute. That's about finding the right people. It's not going out and trying to get in front of everybody in the community. It's not picking the zip code where the quote rich people live and sending them all a letter, which doesn't work, by the way. It's about thinking through who loves cats and where can you find them. All right, let's go to the right message because this is critical. It's not going to do you any good to get in front of the right people if you bore them and they tune you out. So we got to get the right message nailed down. Now, let me show you this. Who knows what restaurant this is or what restaurant this picture is from? If you said Cheesecake Factory, you would be correct. Cheesecake Factory is one of my favorite restaurants. Yeah, Alicia got it. They finally built one in Knoxville, which made me super happy. That's where I am, is in Knoxville, Tennessee. Here's what I love. I've been to Cheesecake Factories. I've probably been to 20 or 30 of them in different cities and states. And every single time I go in, somewhere close to the front door is this. It's this display case full of these delicious, yummy, decadent cheesecakes. And the thing is, they get you right when you walk in the door. You go over, you start looking at this stuff, and the only thing that will tear you away from this case is when they say your table's ready. And by the time you order your food, you already know what kind of cheesecake you want, right? They have figured it out. They don't really have to say much other than here's what kind of cheesecake it is, because we're all so in love and we're already drooling and we want this. So here's the deal. Our messaging, what we say to people when we're inviting them to get involved with our organization or make a donation, has to be this delicious. Has to be this delicious. Gay's asking a good question. Some of us live in communities with only one zip code. We have competition from other organizations. How do you modify your plans? So this is one area, Gay. For those of you who are in rural areas, you have got to nail the messaging. So this piece is going to be super helpful for you. It doesn't matter how many other organizations are out there. If you can get in front of people who care about cats and you can nail the messaging, they'll pay attention to you. And that's what we're looking for. People are exposed to about 60,000 messages a day, which is ridiculous. We have to say something that's worthwhile. Here's some things that get in your way. Self-centeredness is one. Self-centeredness is when we say, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, which, by the way, if you just don't share that. People don't even know what that means. They don't know what 501c3 is. You do, but other people don't. So you don't need to start with that. If you imagine that people are only going to listen to the first couple of things you say, don't lead off with we're a 501c3. Don't say we have 6 programs. We work in 7 counties. We save this many animals. We do this. You got to stop all that, because if you think about it, it's basically fundraising French. You're saying we do this, we do that. Do you have a friend that all they do is talk about themselves? You ever known anybody like that? How interesting is it? Not very, right? So we can't be that way when we're talking about the work that you do, when you're inviting somebody to give, when you're inviting somebody to volunteer or get involved, you got to dump it. Here's another thing you got to stop doing. This one makes me absolutely insane. You got to stop asking people to support your goal. And I've seen this 2 or 3 times around the holidays where people would say, our goal is to raise $60,000 during the holiday, and we have a $25,000 matching gift, so please give so we can meet our goal. Now, think about this for a minute. Fundraising is an emotional act. People give because they feel something, and then they justify it in their head. They give because they feel something. What is it what emotional pull does it have when you say, hey, our goal is $10,000? There's nothing emotional about that at all. So you can't ask people to support your goal. You want to ask them instead to support your impact. Your goal might be about your existence. It might be about keeping the lights on. People don't care about that. They expect you to keep the lights on. Talk about the impact you're having. Talk about how you're making a difference for cats. That is the juice of the message. And I'm going to show you in just a second how to really lay into that and make it super powerful. Now, the last thing that's going to get in your way in messaging is jargon breath. Jargon is acronyms like TNR that maybe people don't understand what that is. Acronyms is insider language. It could be anything that the average person on the street would not understand. And we are all bad because we live and breathe the jargon every day and we forget not everybody else understands it. So if you're asking your donors to support your TNR efforts, I'm going to ask you to back up and see if there's a different way you can phrase that so that you don't lose anybody. In all of your appeals, your newsletter, your social media, you have to word things for the person who understands the least about your organization. Think of it as least common denominator. All right, let's play a game around jargon. I think you're going to enjoy this. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of very common phrases that have been all jargoned up. And your job is to figure out what that common phrase is. You ready? So this is a jargoned up version of a very common phrase. And here it is. Members of an avian species of identical plumage congregate. What's that really say? If you said birds of a feather flock together, you got it. See the difference? One is very easy to understand. This one's all jargoned up. And I'll tell you what, sometimes we think we need to sound smart. Now, I'm guilty of this. When I first started writing grants, I would get all in my head and use all the big words and try to make it sound really smart. But guess what? If I'm using acronyms and slang and insider language that the foundation doesn't understand, my chances of getting that grant just went down. So I need to keep this super easy for a grant reviewer to understand. If I'm communicating in a newsletter to my donors, I got to keep it super easy for people to understand. People are not going to work hard to try to understand what you've written. Now let's do another one. What's this really say? It is impossible to indoctrinate a superannuated canine in innovative maneuvers. I love that word, superannuated. If you said you can't teach an old dog a new trick, you got it. Isn't this fun? One more. Freedom from incrustations of grime is contiguous to possessing divine attributes. What's that really say? If you say cleanliness is next to godliness, you got it. All right, the point here is keep it simple. Keep it super easy for people to understand. Don't make them work hard. Now, I mentioned a minute ago, existence versus impact. My friend Beth Brodowski over at Nonprofit Toolkit said this a couple of years ago, and I thought it was brilliant. People don't want to fund your existence. They want to fund your impact. So if you're asking people to give, you have to tell them what their money is going to accomplish. So let me show you something that I teach, and this works across the board for everybody. We call it your core number. The core number is an expression of what it costs you to deliver a unit of service. So your unit of service is the smallest block of what your organization does. So let me use a shelter because I think everybody can wrap their head around this. So actually, I calculated this with one of my clients about 3 years ago, and they're a shelter. They're I would say a mid-sized shelter in Southeast Missouri. And so as we were looking at this, we said, okay, I know you got a lot of different programs, but let's keep it simple. Let's talk about a day's worth of shelter, food, and veterinary care. And I think that's a unit of service. So 1 day for one animal, whether it's dog, cat, whatever it is, 1 day, one animal, that's a unit of service. So what we did is we looked at and we calculated from the previous year the total units of service that they provided to the community, right? So the total number of days of care. And there's a couple of ways to do this. So number one, if you know how many animals you took care of and you know the average length of stay, you just multiply that out, it gives you the number. And then we took their entire expenses. So all the expenses, not just the direct expenses, not just what it costs in the shelter, but all the expenses, and we divided it out. And what we found was, for them, it was $6.20 a day to provide food, shelter, and care for a cat or a dog. Think about this, $6.20. So we were able to use that number to go back to the community and say, your donation, your gift of $6.20 is going to provide shelter, food, and veterinary care for an animal for a day. That is an easy yes for a donor or a prospect. They understand exactly what their money's going to do. They don't question if this is a good thing. And some of you may be thinking that number is weird. It is. It's not $6 even. It's $6.20. That is the actual number as we calculated it. And what happens is when you have that weird number, for some reason people think it's more believable. Let me show you a couple more. Oh, I thought I had another one on there, but I don't. All right, so $6.20 per day. How about $12 a day if you're taking care of a bigger animal, or maybe $35 for a spay neuter surgery if that's all you do. If your organization is all about transport, then you could talk about what it costs you per animal per transport. The real trick is to figure out that unit of service and then crunch the number. The more weird the number, the easier. So I'm telling you, when you have that odd number, asking is so much easier. We actually were able, same organization, to use that $6.20 a day and ask people to make a monthly donation to provide a day's worth of care every month. So we had so many people say yes to that because that is a no-brainer. If you get down below about $10 or $12 in your core number, it is perfect because you can use it for so many things. So the big question for you is, what delicious thing are you asking people to support? When you use that core number technique and you ask people to give $6.20 to help you provide a day's care for an animal, that's easy. That's an easy yes, because it's a small amount of money. They understand. And by the way, you can take that $6.20, and this is what I do with everybody. You can multiply it for different giving amounts. So $6.20 times 7 is like 42. I forget, 42, 40, 42, 20, something like that. And that's a week. So then you can say, if you want to give this 42.40 per week, your 42.40 provides a week's worth of care. And then you can multiply it on up and get several different ask amounts. If you're asking people to give so you can help take care of cats, that's not quite good enough. If you use that core number, it works, and it works big. All right, so we talked about right people, right message. Let's talk about the right time. What does timing look like? Timing is important. Now, if you can see this picture on the slide, what do you think has just happened here? What's going on with these two? Do you think, and it looks like a wedding, right? Looks like maybe they've just gotten married. Do you think she wore that dress on their first date? Yeah, probably not. Although here in Tennessee, I guess we do still have shotgun weddings, but this is not one of them. It's really important to get to know people before you ask them for money. You typically don't jump into a marriage on the first date. Typically don't jump in bed on the first date. There's some things that have to happen. So what do you think happened between when this couple first met and this day in this picture? They probably went on dates, right? They went to the movies. They went to lunch together. They played putt-putt. They were hiking in the woods, whatever they thought was fun. And it's the same thing with donors. We need to get to know our donors. We've got to treat them as something special in order for them to continue giving. This concept of relationship building is a little tough for some people, so let me dig into it with you so you can understand what it might look like. By the way, this was my daughter. Isn't that fun? It was her wedding a couple of years ago. Okay, I want you to imagine that the relationship with a donor is like this piggy bank. Every time you make that donor feel good, you share a story, you show a photo with a happy ending, you maybe share a video of your organization at work. Every time you share something that makes them feel good, you're making a deposit. Every time you ask for money, ask them to volunteer, ask them to buy a ticket, ask them to buy a t-shirt, ask them to help in any way, you're making a withdrawal. Now, you don't have to be an accountant to understand that if that account ever goes down all the way to E, the account will close. So you have to keep a positive balance in the relationship account. Now, if this is not popping right out at you, what this means is you have to do more feel-good stuff than asking. And you have to understand that asking doesn't just mean asking for money. It's asking for volunteers, asking for fosters, asking people to share something, asking them to support Amazon Smile, which I think is a huge waste of time because you can only ask so many times, and you don't want to use one of your asks inviting people to do Amazon Smile because you're going to get like pennies. You're going to get pennies out of that. All right, so let's talk about what gets in your way of building the relationship. Because again, when you get the big loyal donor base and you're building the relationship, people are going to stick around. Desperation mode can get in your way. If you are desperate for money and desperate in your ask, people are going to hear it, they're going to feel it, they're going to smell it, and they're going to go away. So even if you are desperate, you can't come across as desperate. You still have to ask people to support your good work, not give so you can keep your doors open. Don't do that. You can do an emergency appeal like that once. And after the once, people don't want to give because nobody wants to support a sinking ship. The ick factor also is going to get in your way, and that's when you feel really uncomfortable asking. If you don't feel comfortable, it is going to show. It's going to actually show up pretty big, and people are going to question giving to your organization if you feel really uncomfortable asking. We all have that radar to try to figure out what's wrong with the other person. This is probably the biggest thing that gets in your way of building relationships, and it's what I call skipping the ABCs. So what in the world are the ABCs? Thank you for asking. The first thing is that it is your job to build the relationship. Your job to build a relationship with donors. And what that means is you have to add value. People only stay in relationships where they're getting something out of it. What does that look like? It's really simple. If you haven't heard me say this twice, I'll say it again. You have to make donors feel good about giving. You have to give them the stuff that that makes them smile and warms them up. You got to tell them a story about the good work you're doing in saving cats. Share photos and video. Give them the happy ending. That's what they care about. That's what they want to know. They don't necessarily care about a lot of stuff that matters to you. So we have to put ourselves in the donor's shoes and really understand what matters to them. It's up to you to build trust. And that can be some pretty easy stuff. When someone gives, they need to be thanked ASAP, like within 48 hours. If they give online, there ought to be an immediate thank you that goes out that is warm, sincere, and dripping with authenticity. I just literally saw a thank you this morning, and it was so cold and sterile, and I'm like, and it's one of my clients, so they're about to get it. It has to be warm. Building trust shows up when you return phone calls in a timely manner. You return and respond to emails. You respond to comments on Facebook. You share your financials. One of my new clients actually, and one of the reasons I took them on is because on their website, in the About Us section, they have their 990 and their finances, their financial statements from last year on their website. That is trust building. That is some serious transparency, and I love it. Love it, because that tells a donor we don't have anything to hide. It's up to you to cultivate interest. What this means is you got to be frequently and consistently sharing. You can't just go months and months and months with no contact and then show up with your hand out asking for money. Email newsletters can be super handy tools here. We talk a lot about this in ARF Club, but most newsletters are crap. Most newsletters are not worth the time it takes to open them and skim through them. They're hard to read, they're too long, they're inwardly focused. So if you do a newsletter right, it can add value and cultivate interest for you and also build trust, but you got to do it right. You got to do some updates. If you haven't done an annual report or an impact report on what your organization did last year, now is the time to be thinking about that. If you haven't sent your donors a summary of all their giving from last year, now is a really good time to do that. All these things build trust, and they give donors a reason to care about your organization. Now, people ask me this a lot. How often can we go out and ask? Because this is important in timing. If you're thinking, well, you know, I want to try to ask definitely in the fall because that's fundraising season, I would say, yes, you're right. But here's a different way to look at it. So instead of thinking about what months of the year can we ask, which there's a place for that when you're putting a fundraising plan together, but I want you to think about it slightly differently. You can ask as often as you want, as long as in between the asks, you have 3 really good, warm, sincere communications. So if you wanted to make an ask, let's say if you just asked in December, you want to ask again in February, as long as in January you've got 3 things that are going out that make people feel good, you're okay, you can do that. Those 3 communications, now it can't be boring and it can't be slapped together. It has to really resonate with the donor. It has to make them go, oh, wow, I love that group. They do such good work. I love them. When that happens, you can ask as often as you want. The key really is to build trust. People give to nonprofits they trust. They're going to volunteer with nonprofits they trust. They're going to recommend nonprofits they trust. Now, I do want to get practical for a minute. We're going to talk about some fundraising strategies because I think a lot of people make this way, way, way too hard. And we're going to try to simplify this and give you a place to start if you don't know where else to start. Now, I do want you to stay away from the nickel and dime activities as you start to think about what you want your fundraising plan to look like for 2019. Stay away from the sole source funding. Stay away from the same old thing, which means you do what you've always done. You probably know the rest of that saying. When you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. So we need to do it a little differently. All right, I want to do one last poll just because I'm curious. How many of you have a fundraising plan? Your choices are, yes, it is in writing and we are following it. Kind of, but it's in my head. Or plan? We're supposed to have a plan? All right, this will be interesting to see where you are. So far, the results look like what I would have guessed. Planning is important. I literally just led a 2-hour workshop this past Friday on putting a fundraising plan together. We had almost 100 people in that workshop trying to understand how to get that done. Okay, last call. And let me close this and we'll share it. 14% of you said yes, you've got it and you're following it. Good job. Reach up and pat yourself on the shoulder because you're doing it. You nailed it. 64% of you have kind of a plan, but it's in your head. If it's in your head, it's not real and you need it to be real. So we got to get it out of your head. And 21% of you said plan. We're supposed to have a plan. I find that a lot of people move so fast, they don't take the time to put a plan together. Some people don't know where to start. They're so focused on saving animals that fundraising kind of takes a back seat. And I'm going to tell you, if you're the one person running your organization, you got to have some help. You've got to spend some time on putting a plan together. So let me show you what a good plan could look like. This is where the 1-10-1000 rule comes into play. I want you to do one fundraising event. One. I'm not talking about adoption events. I'm not talking about volunteer recruitment events. I'm talking about fundraising events. Do one during the year, put everything you've got into it, hit it out of the park, and then move on. You can make it a signature event so that everybody knows it's your event. So one of my clients does something they call Furry Scurry, which is it's like a walk run, and it's huge. They raise over $100,000 with this event. It's awesome. It is their signature event. Got another group that does something they call Fur Ball, which looks kind of like this picture. That's not this picture, but it looks kind of like that. So the thing is, don't get on the special event hamster wheel. And we could talk a lot about events. I don't have time to talk about events today, so let me move on to the 10 and the 1-10-1000 rule, which is grants. Don't leave grant money on the table. 10, why 10? Well, I've got a grant writer on staff and she does a lot of research for people and she almost always can find 10 good hot grant leads. The point here is do not leave grant money on the table. There's grant money out there that you could be going after. You got to get a deadline calendar put together, make it part of your fundraising plan so that you know when the grants are due and you're not at the last minute trying to figure it out. A little bit of time spent on research and putting that deadline calendar together can save you a lot of headache later. So one signature event, 10 grants, and then go build your donor base to 1,000 donors. There's a reason why I want to say 1,000, but first let me say, if that freaks you out, don't worry about it. Get the first 100. If you already have 100, add another 100. The point here is you will never have too many donors. You need to build that donor base, build it, build it, build it, because that is what creates the sustainability. When you get those people who love what you're doing and you are communicating with them regularly and making them feel good, guess what? They're going to give. They're going to give every time you ask. They're going to become monthly donors. You're going to have major donors come up out of that. They're going to bubble up and give you very large donations, and your life is going to get easier. Now, it's going to require that you're going to have to commit to donor-based fundraising, and you're going to have to carve out time, and you're going to have to make it a priority to communicate with and take care of your donors. But when you do that, the magic happens. Let me show you one more thing, and that's the numbers of it. I know, sorry, we should have warned you. We're going to do math on a Sunday, but just look at what could be possible. What could be possible? 25,000 with a signature event? Yes, that's possible. I have worked with lots of organizations that have done 25,000 on their first time with an event. It is possible. 10 grants at 2,500 each, 25,000. That is possible. 1,000 donors at $50 each. That's 50,000. It is possible, and it all adds up to a lot of money. I know a lot of small groups don't have 100,000. And here's the nice thing about this math. You can scale it up or down depending on how big your organization is. So if you're a rescue and your budget is $35,000 for the year, you can scale this down so that it right sizes for you. It's possible. But if you haven't been thinking about it this way, then I want you to start thinking about it this way, because this is how you're going to start taking steps toward fully funding your organization. All right, we covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about that three-part formula for success of right people, right message, right time, that 3-to-1 ratio, and you can communicate. You need to communicate 3 times as often as you ask. Now you've seen the 1-10-1000 rule. What do you need to do now? Well, definitely set some goals about how much money you want to raise this year. Get a plan together, get some help, and get busy. There's a lot to do, and you can make a huge impact, but you got to get busy. Now, I do want to show you a resource that we have available. We've mentioned it earlier, and that is ARF Club. You can absolutely raise the money that you need with a little help. If you want a little help, come have a look at ARF Club. It's a training coaching program where we show you how to simplify all this donor-based fundraising stuff. Every month we take one piece of it, and I share some very powerful pieces with you. I give you just enough information for you to go take action on it and get some results, but not so much that it's overwhelming. I also keep it all very practical so that you don't have to try to figure out how to implement it. We have our ARF Club members are from all over the US and Canada. We have a brand new member who just joined. He's in Thailand. And within a week, he came back and said, oh my gosh, so I'm working on building my donor base. I was able to connect with some people, and one donor just gave us a $35,000 gift, and I was blown away. Like, that's crazy, but that is the kind of crazy that can happen in ARF Club. We spend a lot of time on coaching. We have a private Facebook group where you can get questions any time of the day or night. We share a lot of very specific animal welfare examples. Around Giving Tuesday, I was sharing a lot of campaigns, a lot of images, a lot of graphics, a lot of things that were specific to the world of animals. And the nice thing about that is you can take one of those and model yours after it. You don't have to try to figure out what yours would look like. It's normally $47 a month. So for the training, the coaching, all the materials, it's a good deal. But I want to make a special offer for you, and that is you can get your first 30 days for only $17. We try to make it just an absolute no-brainer. You can sign up at arfclub.com, and we do have a bonus for you because you're here with the CAT conference and we're a sponsor. We're going to give you a digital copy of our 10K Fundraising for Animal Rescue book, which is an awesome book in and of itself that will walk you through in more detail, all the things that we talked about today. So if you'd like to be part of a community, if you're tired of feeling like the Lone Ranger, if you would like somebody to say, look, do this, here are the steps you need to take, if you'd like somebody to give you some worksheets to make it easier or point you toward a campaign that is working, come join ARF Club. All right, it looks like I am right at time, so Stacy will have to come back and tell us if we have time for any Q&A. I know there's a couple of questions.
Oh yeah, Sandy, sure thing. Yeah, if you want to, since you're a better pro at this GoToWebinar business than Kristen and I are, I'm gonna let you keep the control panel. And if you want to scan through those, there are probably a couple of questions in there that you might want to touch upon. I noticed some about being in rural communities and fundraising for cats versus dogs and some of those questions. So I'll give you a minute or two to scroll through some of the comments and questions if you want to touch base on a couple of those topics.
Yeah, you bet. So Eve was asking about that bonus book. No, you don't need a special code. Just go to arfclub.com, and when you sign up, you're going to get that. Barbara was asking about, is there a limit to how many people can be? No, it's when you join ARF Club, it can be everybody from your organization who can join. and participate, which is cool. All right, let me back up and look at questions. So I know there was a couple of things in here. Okay, Lisa was asking, in a mostly puppy or dog-centered small community, how do you get more people interested in kittens or cats to get funded? That's a great question. And doesn't it seem like all the world is a dog world? And then we're over here going like, but cats, cats. So number one, don't fight it. People are gonna love what they love. Try to find those people who love cats and kittens and fan the flames, and keep talking about why all animal lives matter. Keep talking about why cat lives matter and how at risk cats are, and that can help. That can help you a lot. And there was another question here a minute ago. Let's see if I can find it. Lisa was asking about GoFundMe. We're having trouble getting funds raised through GoFundMe. Is there easier way to raise funds in a small community? Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I'll give you a tool that I absolutely adore. It's called Giving Grid, givinggrid.com. They have Giving Grids for all kinds of nonprofits, but they have a whole section just for animal welfare. I've done several Giving Grids and had some really, really nice success with them. They don't take out any fee, so it's free to you as a nonprofit. And people will get a tax receipt. That's one of the things I'm not a fan of with GoFundMe. I really don't like GoFundMe at all. Try that out. The bottom line with any kind of crowdfunding, folks, is that you still have to drive traffic. You still have to get people to go over there. So you have to have a very compelling message, and you have to encourage people to go check it out. Okay, let's see. How about one more? Leah was asking about a capital campaign. So her shelter's in the middle of a capital campaign. We're seeing many of our big donors saying, I will donate to that, but don't come to me for other programs. Suggestions for how we can continue to fund our programs and get donations, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Leah, this is where donor cultivation is so critical. And it's very common. Lots of organizations struggle with this because you got to keep raising your money for your ongoing operations, but you also need the extra money. So when you're cultivating folks and you're asking them to give an additional gift to support the capital campaign, so you tell them how much their donation to your ongoing work is important, but that you also need that additional gift. And when you lay it out, when you help them understand, most donors will say yes, and they will give both gifts. So I would suggest you go back and look at your messaging, look at how you're making your asks, how you're cultivating those donors, what information you're sharing with them, and how you're helping them understand that you need both. There's probably something, at least one something in there that you could tweak and make it a little better. All right, did I get them all?
Yeah, there are a couple that have just popped in at the end.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see this now.
Yeah, those last the two. I mean, I think this is something that's been out since the beginning of time, which is it's really hard to raise money for TNR versus adoptions or other. And you know, that's sort of like what everybody believes, and how do you sort of fight that conception or that idea?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they were looking for a little help and guidance in that arena.
You bet. So let me give you an example of an organization that I worked with last summer. It's called Kitty City. It's in Memphis. I bet Julie knows Cindy Dewey over at Kitty City. And I'm going to give you an approach that they took that worked really well. Now, first of all, let me say, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, it's so hard to raise money for TNR, then guess what? It's probably going to be hard. So part of it is you have to really watch your mindset. Here's the practical tactical that Cindy did. So she has a great relationship with Memphis Animal Services. That's the big shelter in Memphis. And she knew what their intake numbers look like and what their euthanasia look like on cats when she got started. So Kitty City does a lot of trap, neuter, return. They do a lot of spay neuter. They're helping out people who are living in zip codes that tend to be on the poverty line to get those animals spayed, neutered, and so forth. And so Cindy was she's measuring her numbers for a year or two, but then and so that was great, right? She could say, okay, we've helped this many cats, we've done surgery for this many cats that belong to people, so an owner's surgery. But then she looked over at the shelter to see what their numbers were looking like, and guess what? The intake numbers and the euthanasia numbers on cats both were going down at the same time that Kitty City's numbers were going up. Isn't that interesting? So then she was able to go have a conversation. So she called them and she said, that is awesome that your numbers are going down. What do you think? And the shelter said, without a doubt, the work that you're doing is having a huge impact on our numbers, without a doubt. So she was able to use that quote from Memphis Animal Services in her materials to say, look, when we're out doing our thing, when we're doing the TNR, when we're helping people who can't afford to get their animals spayed or neutered, when we're doing that, it's preventing more animals from going into the shelter. It's preventing more free roaming cats. It's preventing all these things. Plus, it's all just healthier for the animals. So she had this like 2 or 3 part message that she went out with, and it was awesome, and it worked.
Excellent. Sounds good. I think that covers it. And if folks need to reach you directly, they can get you through the ARF Club website.
Yeah, ARF Club will actually take you to our website, and you can poke around from there and find the contact page, or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/getfullyfunded.